I'm Jane Kramer, and I always spent my summers here in Southampton. And when I was in high school, I started teaching swimming in the summer here, down between the docks, which is just, the island is out about almost a mile offshore, and it was a protected area. And I gave swimming lessons for 7 years, from 1947 to 54. And then, of course, I spent my summers here, and I've retired up here now and live here permanently. Now, the Lighthouse was built in 1859, and they had 7 lighthouse keepers. And I just want to tell you about the last lighthouse keeper in the mid-40s. He was a war veteran, and he was looking after the lighthouse, and his family owned the Walker House, which is the local watering hole for Southampton. And he would row over in the morning, and he'd leave his rowboat on the shore, and I was giving, of course, swimming lessons there, and he'd walk to town, and he'd come back about 5 o'clock, and he'd get in his boat and try to row, and he'd just row in circles, and he'd say, "Jane, I'm having trouble." And so I would row him back to the island and get him something to eat. Now, in those days, no refrigeration, but even to this day, there's a huge rock in the basement, and anything you want to keep cool, you just put it against the rock, and it was perfect. So I'd light a fire for him, get him in his chair. We had to sober him up because he had to go up the 106 steps up to the top of the lighthouse, and then he also had to go out on the island dock to light the range light. So anyway, I'd give him something to eat, and then I couldn't take his rowboat back, so I would have to swim. But he always gave me a shot of rum. That was to get me back to shore, and so I would swim back, and I did that a couple of times a week for 7 years, and it was just fine. We had a good rapport. After 1954, they retired my friend, and of course I had graduated from Western and was working. So they automated the light. The Coast Guard automated the light, so no one had to live on the island anymore, and so it just deteriorated. Kids, myself included, we'd go out and party out there and so on, and people stole everything out of the house, and the house just got partly just torn down, and the roof fell in and so on, and so it was just a wreck. Now, the light was fine. The Coast Guard looked after the light. It's an imperial lighthouse, one of 3 here on the Great Lakes, and they looked after that, but they didn't care about the house. So it was about mid-90s, then we had a professor who came up from Guelph University and wanting to know what we wanted to preserve in Southampton and what we wanted to do. Well, a group of us thought, hey, let's rebuild the lighthouse, the keeper's home, and take tours out there. So that's how it got started. And so we started working. It took us a year to get the debris and everything cleaned up. And then we had a couple of stonemasons from Tara. They came and rebuilt the house, and it was interesting because even though they live inland, about 20 miles, they'd never been on the water, and they were afraid to get into our boat, and they were terrified. These great big bruisers, you guys, stonemasons, and we had the life preservers on them, and they sat there, didn't move, and they finally got used to going back and forth, and it was great. It worked out well. So we rebuilt the house, and then I was given the job, because I was the only female on the committee, that I would furnish the house in a period of 1880 to 1900. And I had a year to do it, and I worked with the museum and we'd advertise, and people would say, I've got something I'd like to donate to the house. And so we'd have it, if I liked it and wanted it in the house, we'd have it appraised, they'd get a tax receipt, and everybody went away happy. So it worked out very well. So we furnished the house, and then the town had an old boat that used to be a rescue boat, and they, I think, sold it to us for $1, and that was our boat that we took out with people out to the island and so on. But being a bird sanctuary, we are limited to the number of people we can take out there. But now we have a new boat, and everything is lovely.